Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Orange Bowl Huddle video series. I'm Tony Segreto, your host, and honored to be with you. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Orange Bowl Committee was created all the way back in 1935 with one mission: to bring tourism and drive economic impact to South Florida through an annual football game and supporting events. That game, of course, it's grown into the Capital One Orange Bowl. Now, the Orange Bowl has hosted some of the most iconic college football games in history. Just for reference, the first time ever a primetime college football game was held, that was between Alabama and Texas in 1965. You may have heard of a quarterback who was playing for Alabama at the time. His name was Joe Namath. That game was hosted by the Orange Bowl. Okay. Now, arguably the greatest college football game of all time was Miami defeating Nebraska for the 1984 national championship. Who could forget that? Tom Osborne deciding to go for two for the national championship win. Only Kenny Calhoun knocks the ball away at the very last second. Miami then takes home that national championship trophy. And remember the infamous Tim Tebow jump pass that helped the Florida Gators win the national title in 2009? Yep, that was hosted by the Orange Bowl as well. Well, here on the Orange Bowl Huddle video series, we're going to have the opportunity to hear from some of the greatest names in college football, to talk about the gridiron X's and O's, the landscape of the game, and the storylines of this all so important season. But it will also give us the chance to dive into all of the amazing things that Orange Bowl is doing in the South Florida community throughout the year. And we will touch on that very, very shortly. But first, let's talk college football. And who better to bring in someone with just a tad of enthusiasm for college football. His knowledge, unbelievable. You know him, you love him. If you're a Seminole, you really love him. He's South Florida's own Danny Kanell. Danny, it is great to have you, young man. Welcome. Hey, listen, we're going to get right into this. As you know, Orange Bowl, we have the semifinal game this year. We're going to get to your kind of thoughts on that toward the end of this interview. But, when I look at this season and when we start this season with these games coming up this week, but just an overall look, when I look at this season, this to me, Danny, could be one of the preeminent signature seasons we've ever had. And mainly because of COVID. Because of the super senior now, I truly believe that some schools who may not have had the depth before have that depth and may be more competitive in situations that normally they wouldn't be. Would you agree?
Yes. And guess what? In week 0, we already saw the impact of 22 super seniors at a program like Illinois with first-year head coach Brett Bielema get the best of Nebraska, a team they weren't supposed to beat. They came out there, had depth at a lot of positions. And it showed in the entire second half when Nebraska starts wearing down a little bit, Illinois took advantage of it. And I think there are a lot of programs out there that have players who come back. And maybe they're not players who, are going to have NFL careers, but they're players who love college football and want to put their uniform on for one more season, one more go around. And most importantly, Tony, in front of their fans. Like that's the thing I think, and you hit on it. Because of what we saw last year, the challenges that we had, and some teams only played 4 games the entire year. A couple teams didn't have football at all, but now to be able to have fans in the stands, to get back to at least what feels a little bit more close to normal. I know we won't be normal, but we'll be closer to that experience. That to me is what makes college football, are the atmospheres that the players play in.
Totally agreed. And then when you talk about that, again, that SS, that super senior, we're talking about a coach who now, if a player goes down, and we know the coaches speak, next man in, but next man in could be a quite a drop off, as you well know. Now, next man in, instead of it being a drop off, it's maybe 1A. So it's not such a big deal. And now you can continue the season and or continue a game and not drop off that much, if at all.
Totally agree. And I think it's going to benefit programs that are sort of the middle tier of college football. Because if you're Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, those kind of perennial powerhouses, your seniors probably go off to the NFL. But a program like Illinois, Kansas State, some of these other programs that are just right in the middle of the pack, it might be an opportunity for them to challenge within their conference, to maybe pull off an upset that we didn't see coming because of some of that leadership that comes back and players that are more experienced and more familiar with systems, which will give them an advantage later in games.
Yeah, I mean, I look at schools like you point out. I look at schools like Indiana, right, and Missouri, and who you find they find themselves in games, and then toward the end, maybe kind of just running out of gas. Maybe now that tank won't run out so quickly, and they'll be in that like final 2 or 3 minutes where they need that push.
Totally. And I think Indiana is a great example of a program. Tom Allen has done a fantastic job building up one of their historic seasons in the history, for Indiana football. And they pull off, they beat Penn State for the first time. They beat Michigan for the first time. And now they're trying to back that up. And you talk about players who love their coach. They love playing for Tom Allen, so much so that they're going to come back. So great example of a team that could benefit.
All right, let's talk about this week because, first of all, you always love the beginning of college football. And look, for yourself, for example, I mean, you were blessed to be able to play both in the NFL and Major League Baseball. It's sort of like, man, there's nothing like, that first week of a Major League Baseball season. Everybody's anticipating their team going to make it to the big one. And college football is the same way. But when you have games like we have this week coming up, my goodness gracious. I mean, it's about as special as it gets.
It really is. I mean, I'll be like a kid on Christmas morning, running downstairs, getting ready to open all the presents, because that's essentially what, to me, the first weekend of college football is like. You don't have the NFL, so it's not even, an option to go watch professional football. So all eyes are going to be on the college football world. And it starts off, to me, Thursday night, you've got Ohio State playing a conference game against Minnesota. Friday night, you've got North Carolina, a team with massive expectations around Mac Brown. They go into a tough environment in Blacksburg, and that's just Thursday, Friday. Then we get to Saturday where, noon, it starts off incredibly well with Penn State going on the road to Madison to take on Wisconsin, a game that could have playoff implications for the remainder of the season. And that's just the noon. That's just at noon. Then it gets better. Indiana, Iowa, some great matchups. And this is one of the things that I think the powers that be have done a great job is challenging schools to either play conference opponents or out of conference opponents like Clemson, Georgia, probably the premier game of the weekend, week one, because traditionally we've always seen programs. Let's start with somebody a little bit lighter, kind of a preseason feel to it, where you're expected to win by 4 or 5 touchdowns. You get the backups in, you kind of get your feet under you for the season. Not anymore. Now we've got programs going out there, and who the biggest winners are from all of this? The fans of college football, because we get some remarkable matchups this weekend.
Absolutely. And I still believe too that, these matchups, as great as they are, and they're fabulous, losers, let's say, Clemson, the Clemson game, Clemson, Georgia, or the Florida State, Notre Dame game, or even the Miami, Alabama game, if you should lose that game, you're still in it. You're still in the hunt because you have plenty of time to catch up and show the college football playoff committee that you're getting better when you're supposed to, and you're dominating like you're supposed to.
That is one of the best aspects of college football, is that the regular season matters, right? So you could have this game. Let's use Alabama, Miami, for example. If Miami is competitive in that game, keeps it to a fourth quarter game, and loses by a field goal or even a touchdown, that's an advantage for Miami. That's a resume builder. So this game matters from the perspective of not only if you win or lose, but how do you look in that game? Where if Miami would get blown out, all of a sudden people might write them off and you forget about them for, until they have another opportunity to impress. But this is the best part about college football. The fact that we have a committee that can watch these games and looks at them and says, all right, how did they might have lost, but how did they perform in that loss? And who was the competition they were playing against? But the best part, and this is where I've encouraged, athletic directors of different programs to schedule these tough games early, because you can come back from a loss in these games. And even in some cases, it can help build your resume. The committee will actually give you credit for challenging yourself against a quality opponent, as opposed to maybe scheduling an FCS opponent or some cakewalk on your way there. They'll actually give you credit for playing some of these tough games.
I totally agree. And in the Miami, Florida State situation, right? If I'm Mike Norvell and I'm Manny Diaz, my the question in my head is, have I coached them up enough to handle the stage? To me, that's what's most important. Can I handle the stage whereby if I make a mistake, and you know you're going to, can you get your focus back and have a short memory to continue the game without now losing that focus and creating more mistakes for yourself? Would you agree?
Yes. Then that's the question that every coach going into week one is asking themselves. Like, I think they truly don't know, how are your first year starters, your first year quarterbacks, how are they going to respond to an adverse situation? Because it's one thing to excel in practice. There's not that much at stake, right? You can't lose. You can have a bad practice and you maybe get demoted, but you can't lose the game. You're not going to get booed. You're not going to have an entire country, talking about you on social media. But step on that big stage. If you're Miami, you're playing Alabama, you're Florida State playing Notre Dame with all eyeballs on you. What do you do then if you miss a tackle? What do you do then if you miss a field goal? If you're a quarterback, what if you struggle early? How do you respond there? And that, to me, is one of the most important questions that every coach has to face entering week one, with all those unknowns of younger players getting opportunities. And every coach is like, man, I think we've prepared them, but you don't ever truly find out until you face that final test of going out there and facing a quality opponent like these teams are.
Yeah, I remember a coach once telling me, a college football coach once telling me that the fate of his career is based on whether a 17 or 18-year-old can go over the middle and catch a pass in front of 80,000 people and national television. That's daunting.
Oh, it's massive. And the thing is, you can get a false sense of security. Almost every training camp I've been a part of, whether it was at Florida State or in the NFL, there were always a couple players who popped in training camp. You're like, all right, you get excited about them, the optimism. Man, this is going to be a breakout year for this player, because they made unbelievable plays in practice. But guess what? They turned out to be great practice players. But when the pressure was on, when the heat was on, when it was live and under the lights and on television, for whatever reason, they went away. And so that's that unknown that you're talking about, that every coach is like, I think I have a feel for where my team is going to be. I think this guy's going to be good. But until you go out there and earn it in the biggest stage, it's still an unknown for all these guys.
Yeah, that environment changes from the practice field to the stadium when you have 80,000 people. What about Georgia Clemson? I mean, I think, like you said, that's the premier signature game. We got JT Daniels now with Georgia. Clemson, obviously the preeminent, they just recycle them like Alabama does in terms of players. What are your thoughts on that game?
I think this game's going to be so epic. I really do. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. Like, first of all, you've got ACC versus SEC. There's already a lot of bad blood there. There's a fierce rivalry between the conferences. We know the SEC is going to want to do their chant. And the Clemson, Dabo Swinney, you can almost hear him getting defensive when you challenge the ACC and said his schedule is going to be weak and they don't play anybody after Georgia. You can see him getting defensive about that. But you're going to see just the two of the best programs. There are 5 programs, to be honest with you, Tony, that have elevated themselves from the rest of the field. And Georgia and Clemson are a part of this 5. So this will have a playoff type feel to it. But you mentioned JT Daniels. To me, this is going to determine how good Georgia can be. Because clearly, I think they're the favorites to win their division in the SEC East. But Georgia fans, they've already won their division. They want to see if they can get past the hump for Kirby Smart to win an SEC championship, but more importantly, to win that national championship. And to me, it's going to hinge on JT Daniels, who played awesome, averaged over 300 yards a game in his 4 starts last year. But the competition wasn't anything like he's going to face with Clemson's defensive line, who might be one of the best in the country. So we're going to find out early. JT Daniels, are you ready to step up? And then you talk about shoes to fill. How about DJ Uiagalelei, the quarterback for Clemson, who's got to come fill for one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in the history of college football, and Trevor Lawrence. So a lot of storylines that will unfold in this one, but I'm here for the bloodbath. It's going to be a physical game back and forth that will have playoff implications, because I think there's a great chance you see one of these teams and maybe both back in the college football playoff.
All right, we're going to touch on 2 subjects quickly. We're going to end with getting these predictions, maybe see who you think will be in our semifinal game. But you've played at Florida State. You know where we are here with Orange Bowl. Your thoughts, especially on Florida State, Miami. And I'm not neglecting, please, there's no disrespect to Florida. We know how they are. We know what to expect from them. They're going to have a great season. But here we have 2 young coaches with up-and-coming programs, so they hope. Your thoughts on both of those programs and their coaches and schools?
Well, clearly, Hurricanes and Seminoles both, we've had a very, very bumpy ride over the last decade. It's been up and down, and both programs have had some sort of success, but also had plenty of adversity in that window. As we sit here today, Miami's in a better place, having a great season last year. They bring in De'Ara King, the transfer from Houston. They have, they mount up a really impressive year. Brett Lashley, their offensive coordinator, did an outstanding job. And now they're saying, all right, we're trying to close that gap between us and Clemson in the ACC. And they've done that. I do think it's a critical year for them to continue to build on this season that they had last year, to kind of get another 9-10 win season, to prove that last year wasn't a fluke. We're here to stay now, because that's been a struggle for both Florida State and Miami. Windows, but then you kind of have a regression. For Miami, it's critical that they stay competitive, that they're in that 9-10 win conversation, that they're in the Coastal Division race late in the season, which I do think they will be. For Florida State, I think this is a rebuild year. And last year almost felt a little bit of a wasted year, because Mike Norvell gets hired late in the recruiting game. Then all of a sudden COVID hits. He doesn't get spring. It's been, he's got restrictions. He doesn't get his hands on with the players in practice, restricted time. So he doesn't get to fully implement his strategies in Tallahassee. So last year was a struggle. I think this year you want to see a foundation laid where you don't look at the wins and losses at the end of the year. You look at, are we seeing improvement? Are we more competitive against the better teams like Notre Dame? And you sort of lay a foundation of, okay, we can see progress. We can see a plan in place, which Mike Norvell has done to this point. Now let's see a baseline level so that next year they can come in and maybe start competing more closely with Miami, with North Carolina, and even one day maybe Clemson. But to me, for Florida State, this is a foundational year for Mike Norvell. Lay a foundation which you can build upon, and I think he'll do that.
All right. So who do you think the semifinal games will be, and who do you think will be in our Orange Bowl? Give me a pick now. It's not that we'll hold you to it.
All right. So you heard me say the Clemson, Georgia. I'm going to say Clemson is back, and this is a matchup that we see often, and we've seen it a lot. And I love the rivalry. We saw it last year. I'm going to say Clemson, Ohio State play again in one of the matchups in the playoffs, and it would make a lot of sense regionally for the Clemson to tie in with the ACC for Clemson. I think Clemson will be the higher seed in the matchup, but I don't think Ohio State's going anywhere anytime anyway. So I think you see Clemson, Ohio State matched up again. I think Oklahoma you'll see in the playoff as well. And then it's going to be either Georgia or Alabama from the SEC. I'll go Alabama, because until Georgia actually knocks off that top dog, that's a monumental mountain to climb. They haven't done it yet. I'll give the edge to Alabama again. So those will be my four for the playoff.
Okay, Danny Kanell, listen, we love the fact that you can spend some time with us. And for full disclosure, for those watching, we dragged him from vacation for 15 minutes to be with us. So, and I know it's time for where you are to go have some breakfast. Thank you, Danny. It's so great to see you. And we enjoy listening to you in the morning. You do a great job on ESPNU, and have a great year yourself.
Tony, when you talk about college athletics for a living, every day it's vacation. So I'll take any time you want, because it's the best job in the world. Appreciate it.
Listen, you and I have had long conversations about this with your dad and my son. It's like not working at all, right? It's like, you almost feel guilty getting paid.
Yep, exactly.
All right, Danny, have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break so we can get a word in from our great sponsor.
This is James.
Jimmy! This is James.
Jimmy! Yeah! Oh!
The 2021 Toyota RAV4.
Jimmy!
The RAV for all of you.
Boy, that was great to have Danny, wasn't it? And like I said, when I introduced him, just a tad, just a smidgen of enthusiasm. But I get it. I can't wait for, Thursday to start college football season and to go all the way through the weekend. It's going to be awesome. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Orange Bowl is much more than just a football game. You see, every year, through the virtue of the success of the Capital One Orange Bowl football game, the Orange Bowl Committee is able to positively impact South Florida through its Orange Bowl Cares program, which is comprised of four major pillars. We're talking youth sports, education, community engagement, and legacy programs. Now, within these pillars are incredible events, programs, and initiatives that directly benefit the South Florida community. Events such as the Orange Bowl Food and Wine Celebration, for example, that raises $50,000 annually for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and Special Olympics, Programs like the Orange Bowl Youth Football Alliance, which is home to more than 13,000 youth football players and cheerleaders, and initiatives such as our Legacy Park projects, which were provided millions of dollars toward the beautification of multiple recreational parks throughout the area. Now, just this past spring, the Orange Bowl held its annual Orange Bowl Florida High School football and basketball showcases, hosted multiple OBYFA youth football clinics, and wrapped up its 5th year of the Orange Bowl Leadership Academy. I could go on and on about all of the amazing things happening at the Orange Bowl, but don't take my word for it. You see, we actually caught up with Javier Hernandez-Lichtel, the Chief Executive Officer of Doctors Hospital and Miami Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, for his thoughts on their partnership with Orange Bowl.
As a not-for-profit, faith-based organization, Baptist Health is all about its community. Matter of fact, all of our board members are volunteers. We have no stakeholders. Our only stakeholder is the community, and we're all about giving back to the community that we serve. So we're so committed to youth athletic programs. It's all about making sure that the youth really understand how to protect themselves against any injury, making sure that they use the right techniques and safety protocols to prevent any injury, and making sure that we transition them from youth to adulthood by minimizing any injuries in the field. The alliance with the Orange Bowl has really given us a great platform to really get that message out there and make an impact in our community. As Baptist Health grows into Broward and Palm Beach counties, we're constantly looking for ways to engage with our community. The Orange Bowl High School Girls Basketball Showcase allowed us and gave us the platform to showcase our Center of Excellence, the Miami Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Institute, part of Baptist Health Orthopedic Care. And we provided coverage and services to the youth of Broward County and South Florida as a way of showcasing our institute. The partnership that we have between our two organizations is very long-standing. As a matter of fact, if we add, the history of both organizations, the math probably equals about 150 years. And then if we talk about the impact that both organizations really have in this community, we're really talking about two organizations that are deeply rooted as anchor organizations. So that relationship coming together has just such an extra impact on the community that we value this partnership so much. And I hope that the community sees that when two organizations come together, the multiplier effect is so much greater.
Thank you so much, Javier, and a huge thank you to Baptist Health for your partnership. Now, as I alluded to earlier, the Orange Bowl Leadership Academy, a middle school mentoring program, wrapped up its 5th year in May. Now, to congratulate last year's graduates as we head into the 6th year of this education program, let's bring in Derek Cooper. He is Comcast Vice President of External Affairs for its Florida region. Derek?
Hi, I'm Derek Cooper, Vice President of External Affairs for Comcast here in the Florida region. And on behalf of all of our Comcast employees, we just want to say congratulations. We are so proud of our partnership with the Orange Bowl Committee, particularly sponsoring the Orange Bowl Leadership Academy. We know your hard work and dedication, particularly this year, will definitely pay off. We see future business leaders, community leaders, elected officials in each one of you. And we know you will go on to do great things. And we know this is just that first step. But again, congratulations for all of your hard work. And we look forward to seeing great things from each of you in the future.
Thank you, Derek. And as always, we really appreciate the partnership with Comcast. Well, folks, believe it or not, that's going to do it for our first episode of the Orange Bowl Huddle. What did you think? I enjoyed it. We hope you did. A big thank you to Dana Kanell, Javier Hernandez-Lichtel, and Derek Cooper for joining us. And thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, this is vital. Orange Bowl cares, and it's your support that enables us to do what we do. From all of us at Orange Bowl, I'm Tony Segreto. See you next time.
This is James.
Jimmy!
This is James.
Jimmy! Jim! Oh!
The 2021 Toyota RAV4.
Jimmy!
The RAV for all of you.